people made sacrifice. I even know of people who, both wife and husband, left their children to their grandmother and went to join the struggle, not knowing that they will survive. So that is the level of sacrifice people made, and they were ready to make the supreme sacrifice, i.e., to die for their country. I remember people telling us that you are just joking. Why don't you focus on getting citizenship where you are, and if you can't, just live there. But they were not convinced that this is an undertaking that would lead us somewhere. They were telling us, how? Who are you? Huh? How can you hope to fight a government, an established government, and eventually force it to change or even remove it if it doesn't want to change? I was going to say that we had to start from zero. Honestly, it was even below zero. I'm called Charles Murigande. I was born in the southern part of Rwanda, in a place called Gashiru. Currently it is in Nyaruguru district. That was in 1958, but shortly after my birth, my parents were forced to leave Rwanda and settle in Burundi as refugees. I was then 2 years old, so basically I grew up as a refugee in Burundi, in various refugee camps in Burundi. I did my primary education in the refugee camps. Then when I finished primary, I moved to secondary education in a school that was created by refugees to educate refugees, a school called Collège Saint-Albert. When I finished the secondary school, I was admitted at the University of Burundi. At that time it was called Official University of Burundi. And I did 2 years there and got a scholarship to go to Belgium. That's where I finished my undergraduate and postgraduate and obtained a PhD in mathematics in 1986. That is my education. Later on, I did an MBA at the University of Canberra in Australia. So educationally wise, that is my journey. I have siblings. I was the fifth child in my family, at least those who were alive. I'm told about 5 of them had passed. But when we left Rwanda, we were 5 children. Later on in exile, we got a 6th child. Yeah, obviously, being a refugee is not something that brings joy. If anything, it brings trouble. You grow up asking yourself why you are in such a situation. Like as I told you, I attended the secondary school that the refugees had to create to provide us with an opportunity to study, educational opportunity. While at that school, we were always wondering why. Why is it almost impossible for us to go to schools for Burundians? So you keep asking yourself so many questions. Why are we discriminated? Why are we treated as second-class citizens? Very early on, I remember when I was in S3, I used together with some of my colleagues to go to spend time with Rukeba Francois, this renowned patriot who fought for the independence of Rwanda and was eventually forced to go into exile. At that time, he was living in Bujumbura, and we would go sit with him, ask him a lot of questions about Rwanda, about what are we doing to recover our citizenship, our right to be in Rwanda. So we felt we should do something about our statelessness. Therefore, when RAN was created and started mobilizing the Rwandan refugees for their liberation, I happened to be mobilized also, and I accepted to be a member of RANU. Then RANU mutated into the Rwandese Patriotic Front. I was working with other Rwandans to see what we can do to put an end to that predicament of being refugees, of being stateless. I joined RANU, the Rwandese Alliance for National Unity, which was created in 1989, then in Nairobi by Rwandan refugees. Many of them had moved from places to places. Some of them had started as refugees either in DRC, then because of instability in DRC, they moved into Uganda, and because of instability in Uganda, they moved into Kenya, and they started asking themselves, how long are they going to continue to flee away from their country as if they don't have a country? And started to reflect what could be done to put an end to the situation obtaining in Rwanda that was forcing people to be in exile. So they formed the Rwandese Alliance for National Unity and started mobilizing. Of course, the mobilization was not that fast because wherever they were doing that, they had to be extremely cautious because as refugees, they are not allowed to do any political activity. And the regime in Rwanda was also spying on them, So before you could contact someone and mobilize that person to start thinking of their country and start thinking of doing something that would eventually enable the refugee population to go home, you needed to sit down and analyze the character of that individual, analyze the network of his or her relationship, and assess whether mobilizing such a person would cause a risk to RANU and later on RPF. So it was really a very cautious exercise. Later on, in 1987, at one of the Congress of RANU, they assessed the progress made for the last 8 years. What may have prevented them to move faster, and also realized that there were also some other groups that were being formed, and through a comprehensive discussion, they realized that RANU in its nature was not a broad-based movement, and that we needed to have a movement that would be attractive to many people from all sorts of background, provided that these people agree to a minimum political program. They could be communists, provided that they agreed to this 8-point program. They could be capitalists, they could be Christian, non-Christian. So we agreed on that 8-point program and the methods of work that, in our opinion, would be so attractive to whoever cares about transforming our country into a better country, a country that is welcoming to all its sons and daughters, a country that gives equal opportunity to all Rwandans, and a country that is determined to transform itself from a very poor country to a country that is prosperous. So that's how, on the basis of that program and the methods of work we adopted, we went into broad-based mobilization, and started mobilizing many Rwandans, be they refugees or Rwandans from inside Rwanda. First of all, you start even from forming the organization. There were so many civilians who were involved in the creation of RPF. So first and foremost, the civilian cadres did tremendous work in mobilizing the Rwandan population, be they refugees or those who were inside Rwanda, to wake up and have a full measure of the predicament of our country and also what could be done to change that predicament. And it is through that mobilization that actually people were recruited into the army. Initially, we were recruiting people into the NRA. But when the liberation struggle started on October 1st, 1990, then we had our own army. And the work of the cadres was, it is the work of the cadres that produced the soldiers that joined the RPA. But also the soldiers, to be able to fight and liberate the country, there was also the need to feed them, the need to clothe them, the need to medicine, and also even weapon. So the civilians, and especially the full-time cadres that stopped their employment wherever they were, or even who would graduate from university but make a decision not to seek employment but to join the liberation struggle, either as soldiers or full-time cadres, went around mobilizing all these resources that were needed to conduct the armed struggle. The other aspect was that of making the international community understand the cause that RPF was fighting for. So some cadres did that work of sensitizing the international community, lobbying the international community, so that the international community, when I talk of international community, various nations around the world would understand why people decided to take up arms and start fighting for their liberation. And that work was done by civilian cadres. So they played a big role. Had the military taken arms and started fighting and not received the support of the civilian cadres and the population in general, I doubt that they would have reached far. Had the world not understood why they were fighting, the whole world would have been against them and the struggle would not have reached far. So there was a collective effort and a complementary effort between the military and the civilian cadres. I think the moment could be individual moment, and that individual moment did not happen at the same time. I explain. If someone is let's say in fourth year of medical education and only 2 years remaining for them to get a medical degree, and that person decides to stop his medical training to go and fight for the liberation, or stop whatever that she or he is doing to be just a full-time cadre or someone who has a family, a wife, children, deciding to stop his or her employment and join the struggle. I think that is a war moment. That is really an example of sacrifice that such a person did, and it is the sum of these sacrifices that constitute a war moment. Have not they done that, we shouldn't be seated here talking about the liberation struggle, because they couldn't have been a liberation to talk of. So people made sacrifice. I even know of people who, both wife and husband, left their children to their grandmother and went to join the struggle, not knowing that they will survive. So that is the level of sacrifice people made, and they were ready to make the supreme sacrifice, i.e., to die for their country. And it is that commitment that led to the results we are talking about now. First of all, getting even the Rwandans to be mobilized was not easy. We had spent close to 30 years in exile. People had almost given up about the idea of ever coming back to Rwanda. So when cadres of RANU and later on cadres of RPF started talking to people about the possibility of ever recovering our citizenship, I remember people telling us that you are just joking. Why don't you focus on getting citizenship where you are, and if you can't, just live there. But they were not convinced that this is an undertaking that would lead us somewhere. So the mobilization was not easy. Many of the people were talking to, either those who were inside Rwanda or the refugees themselves, saying, no, the government is strong. Where are you going to get the strength to fight an established government with solid relationship with countries such as France, Belgium? Mobilizing the international community was almost the same difficulty. They were telling us, how? Who are you? How can you hope to fight a government, an established government, and eventually force it to change, or even remove it if it doesn't want to change? So they were not convinced that our effort would lead to the transformation that later on took place. But we kept telling them that, first of all, we have a right cause. Although the strength around the cause might not seem to be enough, but the cause itself is right, and it is going to gather momentum, and eventually, because of the rightness of the cause, we will eventually achieve the results we want. And slowly, a few members of the international community started understanding. We developed a network of friends who started also to articulate our point of view. And because they were talking to their relatives, eventually, slowly, the cause got to be understood. First of all, I think although the preparation of genocide was openly seen by the international community, they did not think that the genocide will take place at the magnitude that we eventually saw. The international community did not really take the full measure of the commitment of the genocidal government to exterminate a portion of the population here. Either they did not have a full appreciation, or if they had a full appreciation, they did not care if that was going to happen. And when the genocide started happening, they did not think that the people who were being killed had the same value as their people, to the extent that they could invest their human resources, military resources, financial resources, diplomatic resources to save those people. I think there were a number of factors that led the international community to think like that and to do nothing about the genocide that was taking place in Rwanda. One of the factors was that Rwanda was not a big country, very naturally endowed with resources such as oil, gas, diamond, and the things that the international community gives value to. And the other factor was that among the countries that have big voices within the international community, there was at least one country that was in bed with the regime here. Notably, France was very friendly with the regime in Rwanda and was determined to defend that regime, ignoring the ills of that regime. And because other countries within the international community did not consider Rwanda as geostrategically important, that voice of France determined the course of action for the whole international community. That is why we saw little or no reaction to the extermination of the Tutsis here in Rwanda. Of course, you asked how did we feel? We felt hopeless, helpless, and to some extent we felt angry. How can the international community, which has freely committed to do everything to prevent genocide, stop it, and punish it, how that community, obligated by the Genocide Convention of 1948, is doing nothing. It's not because they don't know what is happening. They had all the information pointing, the warning signs pointing to an impending genocide. They ignored the warning signs. They were claiming that we are not sure if these warning signs are true or not, are a manipulation or not. But even when the genocide started happening, confirming the early warnings, they opted not to do anything. If anything, they opted to create an enabling environment for the genocide to be executed quickly and consumed very rapidly by withdrawing even the peacekeeping forces that were here. You know, the genocide and the war to stop it left this country in total destruction or in a very desperate situation. We lost 1 million people in 3 months, and 1 million then represented close to 14% of our population, because the population of Rwanda was around 7.5 million. We were left with hundreds of thousands of orphans and widows and widowers. The entire socio-economic infrastructure was destroyed. All the banks were looted. Actually, the economy of this country ground to a halt. Moreover, all the surviving people were displaced. Those who remained inside were displaced even in the country. At one time, we had close to 40 camps for internally displaced peoples. Then we had millions of our people who had run beyond our borders as refugees in Tanzania, Burundi, and DRC. We had no central administration, no local administration. So the country was completely destroyed. That is the picture, a quick picture of what the country was. By the way, I was going to say that we had to start from zero. Honestly, it was even below zero, because you would say if you were given an empty, a part let's say, a part of DRC, because in DRC you have part of Congo with no administration, people still living like in the prehistory. If you were to create a country out of that part, you would say you are starting from zero to build a nation. Here, you are starting from a situation where some of the survivors play the role in killing their neighbors, their teachers, their students, their patient, and even some of the other survivors were survivors of a situation where yesterday they were being hunted down, and their entire families got decimated. So that is the situation you had. You had to build a nation with a people that is seriously traumatized. So you can't say that you are starting from zero. You are starting from minus infinity. I'm talking like a mathematician. So actually, at that point, almost everybody in the world thought that Rwanda was going to be a completely, totally failed state. They could hardly imagine a situation where the people of Rwanda would again live in harmony, live together peacefully, because they were thinking that people would be exerting revenge, and revenge wound, those wounded exert revenge, and it was going to be a permanent situation of killing, revenge, and so on and so forth. So that is really the situation we had. I would say that some of the most strategic and foundational decisions that RPF made that laid the foundation for what you see today are these. First of all, although RPF had fought and defeated the genocidal government and had the right to rule this country by itself, because naturally the human society is that the winner takes it all. And we had even a great reason to be tempted to do that. But we said, as RPF, that would be tantamount to deny ourselves, because from the word go, from even the creation of RANU and then the mutation of RANU into RPF, the foundational reason was to rebuild the unity of the people of Rwanda. If we were to succumb to that temptation of taking everything, then how would we build the unity of the people of Rwanda? That's why we put in place a government of national unity. We invited all the political forces, those who were not openly involved in the genocide. We invited them to come and sit with us and put in place a government of national unity. We wanted a government that every Munyarwanda would look at and feel represented and say, that government, there is no way it is going to meet somewhere in Rugwiro village and take decisions that are detrimental to me because I feel represented in that government. That was the first major decision that has been producing the results you see. The second major decision was to say that although many of our soldiers have lost their entire families, we are not going to allow them to exert revenge. And revenge killing was strongly discouraged. And actually, initially, those who attempted to do that were court-martialed and executed. But by forming a government of national unity, we had to be much more civilized and say people will have to go through an entire fair process of justice. But that resolve of discouraging revenge killing contributed to saving this country from descending into further chaos. The third thing that we did that contributed to this whole process of transformation was to say we have millions of refugees who have fled the country. It would have been very tempting to people who are not deep thinkers to say, oh, by the way, we spent 30 years, 34 years in exile. Huh? These people prevented us from coming back into our country. Let them go and suffer. Huh? They should stay where they are now. Oh, they are now. But RPF, because of its essence, the true character of RPF is building the unity of the people of Rwanda. How do we build the unity if you leave these people outside? How could we stabilize the country if you leave them outside? That's why the first mission of the government of national unity was to create an enabling environment, bring law and order, pacify the country so that the refugees can come back. And we started changing even the laws that govern refugees by allowing refugees to come and see and go back and tell. Normally, if you are a refugee, if you come back to your country, you lose your refugee status. We negotiated with UNHCR so that they would allow the refugees to come and see how the country is and go back and tell the refugees that the situation is fine, you can come back. Of course, that did not produce excellent results as we hoped, because the refugee camps were transformed as hostage places. The government that committed genocide, the forces like the Rwandan armed forces, the militias in Interahamwe had taken over the refugee camps to the extent that even those who wanted to come back would be prevented by these leaders who had taken over the management and the control of these camps.
So they're kind of brainwashed, telling them that what
They were not only brainwashed because they were told that every Hutu who comes back is killed, but they were even controlling them because they had arms. The ministers, they had formed even a government in exile, so they were governed and controlled. So it became a bit difficult. That's why at one point, when they started organizing infiltration, killing people along the borders, we had to decide to go and liberate these refugees who were taken hostage. Because we were convinced that Rwanda was not going to stabilize, we were not going to start a sustainable process of reconciliation and unity building if majority of our people were outside. So they had to come back, and when they came back, we started the process of rebuilding the unity of the people of Rwanda. That's when we launched the Urugwiro dialogue, because the basically majority of our people had come back. We were in a position to sit together and reflect together on what we should do to transform this country. We were able to sit down, take stock of what happened in our country over our 7 centuries of history, determine where we went wrong, also identify what constituted the strength of our country, and decide how we can build a better nation through the Urugwiro village dialogue. By and large, if you look at Rwanda, we've made tremendous progress. There is the physical progress that people can see. You can see infrastructure that have been built. Today, the rate of electrification is such that 75% of our homes have electricity, whereas in 1994 only 3%, if not less. Close to 90 to 95 of our people have access to a telephone or have telephone. When in 94, maybe only 10,000 people had access to telephone. You see nice buildings, nice roads, new airports are being built. The physical is obvious to everybody. Then the fact that in a country where we had a genocide that took 1 million of our people, and a genocide that was not committed by foreigners. We were not invaded by a foreign country that came and committed a genocide against the Rwandan people. It was a genocide committed by a portion of the Rwandan against another portion of the Rwanda. Today we live together, intermingled. We are in the same schools. Our children sleep in the same dormitories, and in some cases where beds are not enough, they sleep in the same beds. They share beds.
Even marriage.
Now we have inter-ethnic marriages. So we've made progress also on that front. However, we cannot be complacent. We still have a lot of people, especially those who were involved in the genocide, who have not abandoned their genocidal ideology, and unfortunately are teaching that genocidal ideology to their children, especially those living outside Rwanda. They have free hand. They freely teach their children and can openly make statements that are encouraging genocidal ideology, and there we don't have capacity to discipline them. So they constitute a negative influence and a threat to what we've been able to do in this country. So on that front, we really need to continue to cement our unity. With a program such as Ndi Umunyarwanda, we need to be consistent and continue to help Rwandans that first to understand that first and foremost they are Rwandans. They can be Hutu and Tutsi, but those are labels that should not be a criteria to judge the character of a Rwandan. So we need to continue and where possible engage even those that are outside, especially these young people. We should not allow them to be only influenced by their parents who happen to be genociders or related to genocide, the people who committed genocide. We should find ways of engaging them and encouraging them to view themselves first and foremost as Rwandans and to be patriotic, to love their country, to commit their lives to serving their country. That is an area where we need to continue to work and work hard. And we need to continue to build a country where every Rwandan feels that she has equal rights as any other Rwandan. We need to get to a level where all Rwandans feel protected equally by the law. For that to happen, we need to continue to encourage people who implement the law to be men and women of integrity. People who shy away from corruption. Corruption has a large spectrum. Sometimes when you talk of corruption, people immediately think of getting money against a service, or but even when I judge people according to how they look like, that is a corrupt mind. If I'm a judge and there is someone whom I went to school with, and I'm not able to judge that person fairly, but I'm judging that person favorably because we went to school together or because we grew up in the same village or we are so-called ethnically related, that is corruption. we need to build a system that would be blind to those factors and administer justice fairly. The Word of God says that it is through justice that a kingdom is secured and made sustainable and made prosperous. We need to continue to make every effort to have such a justice. And justice is not just what you get in the tribunal. So in the prosecution, it is also what you get in every office of the Republic. So even not only in the public service, but also in the private service, private sector. So we need to really continue to invest a lot of effort to build such a country. Of course, the other big challenge that is actually feeding even those attitudes is poverty. So as long as our country remains poor, although we are making progress, we are reducing poverty, but we are not reducing poverty at a speed that provides us great satisfaction, that eradicate poverty. So, and when people are poor, they are exposed easily to manipulation. So that is an area where we are still challenged, where we are still challenged to make a lot of effort so that we can liberate ourselves. So we need to continue to invest in the transformation of our economy, to produce wealth, and wealth that is equally or fairly distributed, to the extent that everybody is uplifted out of poverty. So when we will have achieved all those, then we can say that we have successfully liberated our country. As a Pan-African person, you would say our relationship with other countries, especially other continents as Africa, must also be redefined. We need to make sure that when we are dealing with other countries, we deal with them as sovereign nations with equal rights. We must put an end to the situation that has prevailed over the last 60 years of African independence, where we are still being dictated by our former colonial masters and those who are linked to those former colonial masters, telling us what we should do, how they want us to be, how we should live our lives. That is another liberation that we should pursue. Some countries are really engaged into doing that. And one of the greatest achievements of our leader is that he has educated the Rwandan people to seeing themselves as people who have the same rights, same value as any other people around the world. People who within themselves have the capacity to develop to achieve the development other people have achieved. And it is that capacity that needs to be liberated. I like to say that one of the greatest legacies, he has so many legacies, but the greatest legacies he's going to leave to Rwandans is that of having given us dignity, having helped us to see ourselves as no lesser human being than any other human being. Today, Rwandans feel like they are not lesser human being than Americans, lesser human being than French, Belgians, but that is a huge achievement. And we need to continue to pass that legacy to our children, our grandchildren, and to protect that legacy, because that feeling of being a dignified human being that have self-worth, is what is really producing the transformation you see here. It is really that knowing who we are in the eyes of God that is making our young people to dare create things, to dare undertake things, enterprise. So that seed that our dear president has planted in the Rwandan people is really what is going to sustain the transformation we've seen over the last 30 years, and it is what is going to protect the achievements and even help us achieve more. The message I would want to give them is that they should learn to live for others, to be ready to sacrifice their lives for others, be driven by the desire to impact positively the lives of others, and first and foremost, the lives of Rwandans. Of course, when I say the lives of Rwandans, that includes their own lives, the lives of their family members, but they should be broad thinkers, and whatever they undertake in life, they should always ask themselves, what impact, what am I doing is going to have on the lives of people, the lives of Rwandans. What I'm doing, is it transforming this country for the better? They should be helped to understand that if today they live in a country that is not judging them on the basis of where they were born, on the basis of their religion, their ethnicity, but a country that is judging on the basis of the content of their character, their intellectual capacity, it is because some people have paid their lives for that. And young people like them, when the liberation struggle started, We had young people from secondary schools uh, who left their studies and came to fight. Many did not make it. They died in the process. But I'm sure that wherever they are happy because the cause for which they died eventually triumphed. But they must be ready to protect and improve on what has been achieved. And it is important for them to protect their dignity. And dignity is broad. They should not be wasting their lives in drug abuse, in alcoholism, sexual immorality, because there is nothing good that comes out of that. It is going to destroy them. Rather focus on what they can do to improve their personal lives, their family lives, and their country. That is the message I would want to give to our youth. And this country's future is in their hands. If they decide to kill it, they can kill it. If they decide to make it prosper, they can do that because they have the capacity to do that.